The Self-Helpful Podcast is brought to you by Ziglar, your premier source for equipping life and leadership coaches. Visit Ziglar.com and let them inspire your true coaching performance. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining me as I talk with today's most important influencers, guides, and change makers to uncover what truly drives them and extract the big takeaway from their personal journey and their greatest wisdom. I'm your host, Kevin Miller. This is Self-Helpful. In this episode, I'm back with Dr. Bradley Nelson. If you listen to the previous episode, we talked about healing, and we talked about it in reference to his original book, The Emotion Code, and then we went into the new book, The Body Code, which is the step-by-step instructions for working with your body's energy and healing power. It was mind-opening, blowing to me, in all truth. And in this one, we're going to talk, this is the What Drives You segment that I do with every guest, and talk about what drives Brad in each of these key areas of life, what he values in those areas, and what he's doing to walk those out. And I'm honestly, Brad, I'm curious on these, on how you do some of this in regards to what we talked about, the healing and the emotion code and the body code, and how those walk out. So this will be fun. Thanks for being back with me.
Hey, great to be back, Kevin.
Well, so we start off with spiritual, and I know from reading your book and even from our previous topic that is a high value for you there. Give me a synopsis. When you look at your spiritual life, what is it that is the value that you adhere to?
Well, it really goes back to age 7. And in fact, my whole healing journey really began at age 7 because I was really sick with the measles. And my folks had made a bed for me on the couch in the living room so I could be near their bedroom. And I had overheard them talking. I knew that the plan was they were going to put me in the hospital the next day, and I was going into something called an oxygen tent, which I don't think they have anymore. But I remember lying there on the couch, feeling really nauseated and feverish. And then everyone else had gone to bed. My parents came into the room, and I remember this like it happened yesterday. And my mother said to my father, she said, honey, will you kneel down with me and will you say a prayer for our boy so he'll be able to get well? So they did. They knelt down by the side of the couch there, and my dad starts offering this prayer. Now, my dad was not a preacher or anything. He was a very good man, but he didn't really seem all that religious. This is probably the first time I'd ever heard my dad pray, in fact. But in the middle of this short, heartfelt prayer, something unbelievable, something impossible happened. This change began at the top of my head, and it went whoosh through my body to the soles of my feet, and I was instantly made well. Now, of course, in Western medicine, that's impossible, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you, I've met a few people in my life who've had this kind of experience, and we all agree, if that happens to you, you can't forget it. It's impossible to forget. It's like it's burned in every particle of your being. And I remember that like it happened yesterday, and I held my tongue till my dad was done praying. I didn't want to interrupt him. And when he was done, I said, I'm better. And they said, okay, that's fine. Go back to sleep. Tomorrow you're going in the oxygen tent. And that taught me a couple of really powerful things. It taught me that there is an unseen power, a higher power we can draw upon. And it also taught me that healing doesn't necessarily have to take a long time, because it can happen instantaneously. And that's what happened to me. And so on the last podcast, I talked about how I became a computer programmer, but how I had been healed of kidney disease when I was 13. And so what happened was I was about 6 months away from going into the MBA program at BYU, Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. And my wife and I went home to Montana. This is in the winter of 83, 84. And we were sitting around with my parents, and my dad, kind of totally out of the blue, said to me, he said, are you sure that you don't want to go to chiropractic school? It seems like a great career, and you've always wanted to do that. And I said, no, I'm going this other direction. I'm really into computers now, and I'm going to get my MBA and so on, go to work for some big company. He said, well, why don't you think about it one more time? So he kind of caught me at, a vulnerable moment. And I thought, well, all right, I will. I'll think about it one more time. Because, I had always wanted to go into the healing arts, but now I was going a different direction. And so now I've got these two alternative futures, these diverging futures in front of me again. And now I'm not sure what to do. My wife and I made up a pro and con list, of going into the healing arts, going and getting the MBA. And it was, long on both sides. So having learned that there's a higher power you can draw upon, that night I got on my knees and I prayed and I asked God, I said, if you have anything to say about this, help me to know what to do, because I can go either way. And I think I could be happy either way. So that night I was awakened 3 times. And each time that I would wake up, I would find my mind full of these warm, happy thoughts about helping people naturally and serving people. But I would always counter with thoughts like, well, yeah, but computers, the new IBM PC has a 4 megahertz processor, stuff like that.
Of course.
Right. And so
God,
the next day,
it's a toss up,
So the next day I still don't know what to do. And so that night I get on my knees again and ask for help. And on the second night, Kevin, the universe, God, higher power, definitely got through to me, because on the second night I was awakened again 3 different times. But on the second night, each time that I was awakened, my mind was full of thoughts that were like exponentially more powerful than the time before, such that on the third time, on that second night when I was awakened, the thoughts were absolutely overwhelming. I mean, thoughts of service to mankind and humanity and the whole entire world. And right then I heard a voice that spoke to me as clearly as I'm speaking to you right now. And it said, "This is a sacred calling." And I thought, okay, I get it. And I didn't really know what that meant. But one day when I was in practice, remember in the last podcast, I talked about how I had developed this habit of prayer. Mm-hmm. And before I'd go to work on somebody, I would just take a moment. It was just a momentary pause. None of my patients ever knew that I was, saying a prayer for them before I would start working on them. It was just a momentary pause, really. But one day, a patient came into my office, and it was just a routine visit. And I had this habit where I'd have the person lay face down on my chiropractic table. Before I'd go to work on them, I would just ask for help from up above, right? Just, a momentary pause. This one day, I did that. And when I turned my attention to this person on the table, all of a sudden, it's like my spiritual eyes have been opened, and I suddenly perceive that I'm standing in the presence of this sacred temple, the temple of the body, the temple that is this person's body. And I had heard that before. The body's a temple. Mm-hmm. Anybody that's ever been to, Sunday school has heard that or read the scriptures at all. I'd never really given it much thought. But all of a sudden I'm standing there and I'm absolutely understanding this and Perceiving this in this spiritual way. This was given to me. I didn't come up with this. It was like my eyes were opened by the higher power to understand this. And it just instantly filled me with this deepest sense of reverence and awe. And then that window closed again. And I was back to being, I was back to normal. But I've never forgotten that. And so I used to think of myself sometimes as a temple repairman. It changed the way I view things. It's like, our life is divine, and God is our Father, and He's real. I know that He lives. I know that the purpose why we're here really is love. It's love that drives everything, that keeps all these planets in motion, and it's God's unconditional love for us that enables us to be here and to live our lives and to make our choices. And He never forces anything on us. It's all up to us, but hopefully we make good choices and when we get to the other side, the whole point is to get back home one day. I had another experience about that. I mean, you're asking me about my spiritual.
Yeah.
One day I was 18 years old and I was sitting just meditating quietly one day. And I had this experience. What I believe is that before we come here, we are living with God in a place of total abundance, total perfection, total unconditional love, right? Everything. And then we come to this world and our memories of that life before are blocked in some way to us. And we can't remember where we were before. All we know is that we're here, right? And there are reasons for that, divine reasons for that, so that we can, I believe, these are just my beliefs, so that we can have really a kind of a perfect environment where we can really make our own decisions and choose who we're going to be. And so one day I'm sitting there, 18 years old, meditating, and all of a sudden, it's like to some part of me, that veil that divides us from that life before was lifted just for a few seconds. And the result of that was that I was instantaneously filled with the most overwhelming, incomprehensibly powerful feeling of homesickness. To be back there, where I was before, I think where we all were before. And it only lasted for a few seconds, but it just left me reeling. And I realized from that experience that we really are strangers here. That if we did not have that veil or that forgetfulness that is put upon us when we come here, that we would not be able to stand it here in this world for 5 minutes. That's how far we've come from where we were. And so I've had these experiences like this that have changed my perceptions about what reality is. And so and being in practice and then having these experiences with my patients where sometimes people would come in to see me and I wouldn't know how to approach their problem or wouldn't know how to help them. And in response to that little prayer habit, information would just flood into me like an avalanche of data and understanding. And sometimes it was a way to think about things that no one else had thought of before. Yeah. And so as an example, here's an example that might be relevant for you, having had that bike crash and the trauma. One day, many years ago, a man came in to see me. He was 42 years old. This was his very first visit. He told me that 4 years before, he'd been in a car accident. And he was rear-ended at a stoplight. A lot of damage to his car. He got whiplash. He said that he'd seen a couple of other doctors during those last 4 years, but that his neck still hurt like the day after the accident. He said his neck was still a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale of pain, which is a lot of pain. And I thought, gee, that's kind of odd. After 4 years, you'd think he'd be doing better than that. And so before I went to work on him, I said this prayer. And I said, Father, help me to understand if there's something. And this is just totally silent. It was in my mind, right? He doesn't know I'm praying. But I'm saying, Father in heaven, help me to understand if there's something going on here with him that I need to know about. Help me to understand this because this seems kind of unusual, right? In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. As a Christian, I pray in the name of Jesus Christ. And immediately this answer flowed into me. And the answer was that when this guy was rear-ended, there was a lot of kinetic energy that was released, right? That crumpled the fenders and bent the frame of his car and went through his body. But some of that kinetic energy that was produced in the 300 milliseconds that it takes to have an accident, some of that energy got stuck in his neck and was still there. And that was the answer. And I thought, whoa, that's weird. So some of the energy from 4 years ago was stuck in his neck. And so I took a magnet and just swiped it down the middle of his back a few times down the governing meridian, which is how we release trapped emotions and other things. And then I said, okay, now I haven't touched this guy yet, right? Except for that. And I said, okay, try your neck, move it around. He looks left and right and tilts his head up and down, and side to side. And he said, how did you do that? And I said, well, how does it feel? And he said, well, I'd say it's a 2. And I said, well, when's the last time it felt that good? And he said, well, before the accident, right? And so this is just one of the things that we now make available in the body code. And we show people how to do this. Most people have some kind of a physical trauma from something that they've been through.
Yeah.
And it can be causing pain and discomfort in the here and now. So I had lots of experiences like that, right? That taught me about things about how the body really works and what's really going on. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. I mean, that testimony right there is, I would say, the essence of faith in general is, regardless of the questions and the doubt and whatever, is just our personal experience. So I appreciate the stories.
Yeah.
I do want to just I don't want to take it to deviate at all, but I just read it in the book and I wrote it down on this, that you said it was a quote, I think, that you did, or a study at death, the human body loses 21 grams of weight.
Yeah.
At the moment of death. Yeah. The spirit, the energy moves on and the body decays without a life force. I think that stuck out, Brad, because we had a guy on the show, Dr. Jordan Grummett, palliative care doc. And when I asked him this question about spirituality, he said, man, one of the foundations of his spiritual life that he had kind of walked away from was that when he became a palliative care doctor, he so often was in the room with someone who literally passed away.
Yeah.
And he said, man, I just can't deny that when that happens, something leaves.
Yeah.
Something leaves. Again, back to the experience. And it was just interesting when 21 grams of weight leaves and something leaves. And that's pretty scientific, on the grams. Unreal. Thank you for the stories on that and the experience. It's tremendous. Relationships is the next area. Mm-hmm. And to look at relationships and what drives you in your relationships. Yeah. What are the values that you're embroiled in today with your relationships?
Yeah. Well, really, living this long and having experienced all the things that I've experienced, to me, what it really comes down to is unconditional love. When people die and they go to the other side and they happen to come back, some of them do, they often have a life review. And if they're asked questions, often they're asked, how much love were you able to develop? What's your capacity to love others? And, the Apostle Paul talked about that. And he said that if we have the power to do all kinds of miracles, and if we have all knowledge and we can do all kinds of amazing things, if we don't have charity, or in other words, that pure unconditional love, that ability to love others unconditionally, then it's all wasted. It's all pointless, right? It's all for nothing. And I think he was absolutely right. I think that Zach Bush had an experience. I guess it was Zach Bush. I think it was either him or the guest he had. I can't remember. But there was a guy on the show, on that show that I saw on YouTube, and I think it was Zach Bush. He was an emergency room doctor. I think he talks about how he had this experience one day that changed his life, where he said that normally when when you're watching TV or on the movies, if somebody dies and their heart stops and they flatline, that they're able to hit them with the paddles and bring them back most of the time. He said in real life, they're only able to bring back about 15% of those people. 85% of the time, they're gone. And he said one day in the ER, there were 3 people that he brought back. That they brought back. And they all essentially said the same thing. They all said, first of all, why did you bring me back? And then they all said that for the first time in their whole entire life, they felt totally accepted when they got to the other side. And that changed his life, he said. And I've thought about that so much. And total acceptance is really the fruit of unconditional love, right? it's such a contrast, really, because the world that we live in is so the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you made some kind of a mistake 30 years ago, well, we're going to cancel you. And do you know what I mean? And all of that kind of thing where there's really no room for growth or forgiveness or anything. But, you know, when you're practicing unconditional love, you accept, and there's room for growth. And so, you know, to me, that's really what it's about. And when people talk about becoming an ascended being, and there's a lot of talk about that, and there has been for a long, long time. To me, what that really means is developing your ability to love others unconditionally, you know, to stop judging people, to just love. And, you know, what's interesting is when you practice that, and it's a conscious thing, and it takes effort, and it's kind of I think also it's kind of a gift, something that you can pray for, and ask for help with. I think that definitely helps.
Yeah.
But it can really be a game changer. I remember, for example, when I had an experience one day. My wife and I went to Costco shopping, and it was right after COVID had begun, and it was right during the time of the toilet paper shortages. Remember that?
Right. Sure.
And we were at Costco, and I mean, Costco is busier than I'd ever seen it. And people were zooming around with their carts faster than I'd ever seen them go. And everybody had a really grim, really worried, kind of panicked look. And that feeling of panic was kind of there, and it was kind of contagious. And I was starting to feel it myself. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I don't want to go there. So what I started doing is I just started telling these random people pushing their carts. I would just say to them silently, I'd look at them and I would say to them, I love you. Trying to come from my heart, right? And within about 5 or 6 people, my energy state was right up at the ceiling, and I've got a smile on my face, and my energy level is really high. Because you can think of it in terms of vibrational energy. You know, your emotional state, you're either at a high vibration, which is like the highest one is probably pure joy. The lowest one is shame. There's no lower emotional energy than shame. That's the lowest vibration. In fact, people who are in a state of shame will often take their own lives if the shame is great enough, because there's no lower emotion they can, you know, drop down to. They're at the bottom of the vibrational level. But that's a really interesting thing. Unconditional love. In fact, my wife and I we're writing a book about love. We just started it yesterday. So another year, I'll have another book out about that and the heart. And
I want dibs on the first guest appearance for the book here. I so appreciate that, Brad. I've been studying emotional intelligence. And in that, one of the things that stuck out, it's actually from a book by Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication. And he talks about, in essence, observing people specifically, but observing people, not evaluating them and judging them, which I just haven't really known another language. That's what we do that's a survival mechanism. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But can I stop that? Can I evolve, ascend, as you would say, beyond that to observe and accept? And we could keep going down that, because accept, doesn't mean that you're a doormat or that you don't have any boundaries or that you, are okay with the behavior, but to still accept. So that's a common, thank you for that testimony. That's a common perspective I'm trying to tune into for my own awareness, is observing, not evaluating and judging. It also is funny that you're at COVID. I'm just thinking back to COVID, and you're at Costco and people panicking because they might not be able to wipe their butt. It's just a funny thing. It's just, we all lived through that. It actually happened.
Sure, it did. Yeah.
Can't believe it. Health and wellness, Brad, is the next one. When you look at your own health and wellness, which in essence, that's the focal point, it's not the focal point. All of this is the focal point of your book, and your efforts is for us to be doing well overall. But health and wellness, we look at our bodies, especially. We'll get to mind next. But this one, if we're even just looking at the physicality of ourselves, health and wellness, what's driving you personally right now?
Well, I've been on a water fast for the last couple of days, just kind of ending that today, not eating much. What I have found is that we eat way more food than we actually need. Mm-hmm. And there was a time in my life when I found out that I could actually make a meal out of a peanut. That sounds funny.
Nobody's going to be excited to hear that.
No.
That doesn't sell well. Don't do that for your next book.
No, I won't. But I'm just remembering back, a number of years ago. So health and wellness, what I'm doing right now, yes, I'm working on myself, because, there's always, there are always things to do. The body's kind of like a car. And so in other words, there's regular maintenance that you need to do. You don't take your car in once to the mechanic and you're done for the life of the car. No way. And so, you work on yourself. One of the beautiful things that that we can do with the body code and with the emotion code is we can test ourselves. And you can do this daily routine where you can learn how to check every organ and gland and chakra and meridian in your body every single day. You can check all of those things. Back when I was in practice, I used to have people coming in to see me, like I said on the last podcast, who were really hopelessly sick. And what I would do, I found that I could actually get percentages from their subconscious mind, from their own internal computer system. And I could find how balanced or imbalanced they were. I could find out how well their immune system was working. How that came about was one day, I had a patient that came in to see me, and she was describing how sick she was. And I believed her. I'm sure that she was really sick, but she didn't look sick, right? And she was dealing, I think, with fibromyalgia. And so that's pain. And you can't really tell by looking at somebody really if they're in pain. For example, I wouldn't have known looking at you that you're in pain today. But as I was working with her, I was just thinking to myself, I wish I knew how well this woman's immune system was actually working, because that would be such a great indicator, wouldn't it, of how healthy or unhealthy she really actually is. And this little voice said, well, why don't you just ask? And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. And so I did. So I asked, I had her hold out her arm and I said, okay, on a scale of 0 to 100%, how well is your immune system functioning? As a percentage of its capability, is it functioning at 100%? No. 50%? No. I don't remember exactly where hers was, but it was probably somewhere, below 50%, maybe 35 or whatever, 40. And so then what I started doing at that point is I would test people's immune system function, and at the very beginning, and then I would test them again after I'd been working with them for a little while. And I found that I could get a person's immune function up into the 90% range by using the information in the body code. Mm-hmm. I could do that usually within about 3 weeks of working with them and addressing the imbalances that we find in the body code that are really the things that cause our underlying problems. Those things we talked about last time, the pathogens and the misalignments and the nutritional issues and lifestyle issues and energies and circuits and systems and toxins. And so, so that's basically how I take care of myself is, I use the body code and I actually tune in. And in fact, yesterday I came up with, here, I'll show you. I just picked up a piece of paper, and on this piece of paper, I wrote down the things that I tested on myself yesterday that I needed. And I found these using the body codes. This is specific for me. I need more saturated fats, more pro and prebiotics. I need potassium, vitamin B5 and B12, coconut oil, and garlic. And so I got all those answers out of the body code, specific for my body right now. Right. And so the thing about it is, we go to the health food store, we're looking for things, we might be looking for, something because maybe we're not feeling that great. We walk up and down the aisles and we might think, well, that's a nice bottle. That's really pretty. Maybe I need that. But the subconscious mind might be saying, no, it's that one down there.
Oh, I was just saying, your friend, you asked them and they said, oh my gosh, everything was wrong and I took fish oil and it fixed it. So you're on your way to get fish oil because you might as well try it.
Exactly right. Yep. And your body might not want that at all. But now we have a way, using the body code, we can actually just ask and the subconscious will tell us. It's really fun.
So tell me then, outside of that, then from a nutritional standpoint, you said you're in essence fasting right now, but in general, do you have any kind of a dietary structure that you adhere to?
Yeah. Well, I've been going kind of back and forth for quite a while. I mean, I've been a vegan at times. Lately, I was on the carnivore diet, actually, because I wanted to try it out. And felt really good on the carnivore diet. And I'm kind of going back to where I was before, where I try to test myself more for food, because the subconscious mind also knows about the food that you're thinking about eating, whether it's actually going to be good for you or not. And so I'm striving to have the highest energy level that I can have and be as healthy as I can be and live as long as I can possibly live. And so I'm trying to be more careful about the things that I'm putting into my body, and I'm trying to test things more. There's a book that was written actually by my sister-in-law, Lana Nelson, who's one of our staff practitioners. It's called The Food Code. And in that book, she teaches more specifically about how to use muscle testing to test the foods that you're eating. And you can actually do that. So that's what I'm doing more now these days. Trying to test myself more and, not just eat whatever looks good.
How about on the exercise side of life, movement? What are you doing there?
Yeah, well, I'm not doing as much as I should be right now. My wife and I play pickleball, but we haven't been playing enough. We go to the gym, but we haven't been going to the gym quite enough. So we're in the process of kind of getting back, on a regular schedule. Part of the issue for us that throws us off sometimes is we travel a lot to teach around the world. And so we're always kind of battling with that. But yeah.
Fair enough. Next one on that same line, but let's go to the mental side of it. And what's driving you for your mental. I really like to look just at the mental state that you want to be in, what drives you there, and what are the daily or consistent practices you put in place to be there.
Well, it's really interesting. I think that the words that we speak are really incredibly powerful. The words that we say to other people. And that goes back to Genesis, where God spoke, let there be light, and there was light and so on. And so I think that there's a truth in there that's for us to glean. The things that we say have power. Our words have power. And so when I wake up in the morning, I try to say to my wife, how amazing are you? How fantastic are you? Things like that. And she loves that. And that immediately puts a smile on her face, and so I try to start my day out that way, get on the right foot with her and lift her up a little bit. But sometimes I feel like I need to go on a media diet.
Yeah.
Because, there's so much, and I've recommended that for many patients over many, many years. Sometimes it can get to that point where you really need to just take some time off. That was especially true during COVID. I mean, I knew people who had CNN on all day long and all night long, looking at the death, chart and so on. And oh my gosh, they were just emotional wrecks. And so it's okay to go on a media diet. The world is going to keep spinning without you having to watch all the bad things that are happening. And there are bad things. But, the way I look at it, my own personal belief is that the world is essentially in labor. And the world is trying to give birth to this whole new world. A world that's going to be governed by unconditional love, where people are going to be living from their heart and manifesting their own perfect blueprint of what their life can be into the world. And that sounds utopian, but all of the ancient writings talk about this. It's all predicted. We know how the story ends. And we see now all of these power structures that have held sway and have had control over mankind for centuries and centuries. And they're all, at least some of them, they're all trying their hardest to maintain their power. And so we see things like the whole COVID thing, and we see all kinds of craziness in the world. But the world is going to change, and it's in that process right now. And it has to do with consciousness. I believe that the consciousness level of the world is expanding like a balloon. Every day it gets a little bit bigger. People are waking up a little more every single day, and it's never, ever going to go back to where it was. And so that's how I look at things. I mean, I think it's going to be a struggle, but I do think we are going to emerge on the other side of that struggle, and it's going to be a world that we're all going to have our sunglasses on because it's going to be so bright.
No, I resonate with that. And what you said about the media is interesting, Brad. I don't watch. I try not to. And yet a couple of weeks ago, my wife was on the news with some work she does. So we pull it up and we're watching. I mean, we don't do that. We had to find it. They had it on YouTube or something, some live streaming thing, but it was the news, regular news. I'd forgotten what the news, and even, I mean, I don't look at the front pages of the newspapers anymore. Yeah. And I found the anxiety. Just, we know that if it bleeds, it leads. They dramatize everything, right, and it wears me out. It's kind of like when people send me mountain bike videos of people doing crazy stuff. I don't want to see it. I know what that feels like to fall from that. And it gives me anxiety. I don't want to watch the news. I don't want to watch the media. There's no way to stay in a bubble. And I know far more about Taylor Swift than I can imagine. And I don't even know how. It's going to find you. If it's important, it'll find you. You're not going to miss anything. Yeah. Work, career, your business. And you, like everybody I have on the show, you've got a lot going on. You've got a lot of opportunities. You got a new book. You got, all kinds of things happening. And I know it drives you to looking at, okay, what do I value so it doesn't eat me alive? Tell me about work. Yeah. Well, I'm probably the most fortunate person that you're going to interview. Okay. At least I think that anyway, because I have two great loves in my life, besides my wife and my kids. And one of those is flying. I'm a pilot, and we have a company that has enabled me to be able to afford a company airplane. And so we're able to fly ourselves. And so when I go for interviews and things, and I'm being filmed for a documentary or whatever I need to do, we fly ourselves, which is really convenient and just an amazing kind of a Zen experience for me, because the learning in flying never really ends. You're always working at mastery and always trying to get better. And then my other great love after all of those is teaching. I love to teach people. And I believe that God's given me the gift to be able to teach these simple concepts to people. And so being able to travel around the world and teach people in all kinds of different countries about these new healing methods that are so profoundly powerful and yet so simple, it's just incredibly rewarding. And so for me, and I've got we have a phenomenal team of people that we've been able to put together that are just wonderful. Our company really, it's like a family. And some of the people are family. We have some people that are family members who work with us, and cousins and so on, and relatives. But yeah, it's a mission. Our purpose, we have a statement of purpose for our company. And every Monday morning, we all meet together on Zoom because we're all over the place. We have no business, no building or anything. But every morning we read this, and our company purpose is healing the world by empowering you. Right? And in other words, that's our mission, is to give back the healing birthright to every single person in this world. Every man, every woman, every child is born into this world with a birthright to be able to heal
themselves and their loved ones, in most cases, they can do it themselves. Now, luckily, I mean, Western medicine is great if you need some kind of a drug or you need some kind of surgery. Awesome.
Or you break 7 bones and you go to the ER, it's helpful.
Bingo. Yeah. Don't call me if that happens.
Fair enough. That's tremendous. Thanks for sharing the company mission on that. Well, and a derivative of work then is we do appreciate the revenue that comes from it that funds things. So that's the next one is money and finances and wealth. And I like to even put in there belongings like owning an airplane and whatnot. So what are the things that are driving you there financially in regards to that?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing because, Jesus once said, wherever your heart is, whatever your heart is on, whatever your heart is set on, that's where your treasures are. And so if your heart is set on material things, those things don't last. We know that, right? So it's important to have, it's important to really, for me, it's all about trying to put God's work first in my life. And that work that he's given me is to bring these methods into the world. So we're trying to do that as fast as we can, as best we can. I had issues about money and I had to get rid of those issues. In fact, my ancestors on my dad's side were Irish. And I remember I had a statement that came down the line to me from, I can't remember how many years ago, but it was something that we found one day. My wife was working on me and using the emotion code, I guess, or the body code, or both. And she's working on me and she found this inherited belief, right, that had passed down. And the statement was, I am poor Irish. And before she figured out what that statement was, I had this image that came into my mind, and the image was hands. It was a pair of hands digging in the soil, digging up a potato, probably. And so that was an energy that had come down the line that I had to have removed. It's really interesting. And in fact, one of the things that you can do that's really fun is if someone that you know has a goal, okay, you can test them to see if their subconscious mind is aligned with that goal. Okay. And for a long time, my subconscious mind was not okay with me being wealthy or being well off, having abundance, any of those things. And so, one of the things that you can do with the body code is you can actually ask questions. For example, let's say you have a goal to make $1 million this year in revenue. If you hold out your arm and if you make a statement like, I'm okay with making $1 million this year in revenue, if your subconscious mind is not okay with that for some reason, your arm will go down. You won't be able to resist the person's downward pressure. So this is a way that you can check people against their goals. You can check the subconscious mind. And then using the emotion code and the body code, you can align, you can release those blocks that are in the way. Because I'll tell you something, you see, if this hand of mine represents the conscious mind and where I want to go, and if this hand represents my subconscious mind and it's over here, if those two are not aligned, it's going to be very difficult because the subconscious mind is 99.999999999% of your intelligence, you see. And so you're going to go with the subconscious. It's going to drive you there. Mm-hmm. But if you can align the subconscious with the conscious, that's when things can really start to happen for you. And I think that's really the future of human potential and development is figuring out what the blocks are in the subconscious mind, getting rid of those. In fact, this week we're having our pre-launch event for a new system that we put together called the Belief Code, where you're actually able to use muscle testing and use charts and find through kind of a mind mapping system, find the negative belief systems that you have and get rid of those. And And it's amazing how powerful that can be.
Sign me up for that one, please.
Okay.
Literally, beliefs is our beliefs is big topic for me, big topic of study. And in what you just said, aligning our subconscious, is it alignment with our goals? So my book, Brad, What Drives You, that's a big focus. Is what drives you is getting clear on what you want and why. And then the why is the hard part, because we often don't know why, or we think we do, and it's not. So how do you, getting to the why? And I'm taking it from an aspect of auditing that, but that's big medicine there, to take that and say, okay, this is what I want. Do you really?
And are you okay with it? In other words, you might be totally okay consciously. Yeah. But if the subconscious is not okay, because maybe you have some negative statements in there that are beliefs, like I'm a scumbag, or I don't deserve wealth, or I don't deserve success, or do you know what I mean?
I do. It comes back. I mean, before this book, I had come to the table 2 different times because I had, because the size of my audience, with literary agents and publishers talking about doing a book. And it took me a long time to realize I just wasn't there for me yet. And this would have been something to do. Hey, Kevin, you want to write a book? Well, yeah, I got a topic. Do you really? Apparently not. And I didn't, and I tell the story now, and then I joke about it. I wasn't driven enough to do it, which is true. Then finally this book came along, and I knew it's something that I wanted to do, but that's powerful. I'll be using it in regards to that. I'd be a great reference point for my book. Say, hey, you have to go through these areas of life, and I'm taking them through the same areas that we're going through right now. Saying, what do you want? You and you alone, not your expectations, not your cultural, expectations and whatnot, or somebody else's. What do you really want? Mm-hmm. And then align. You just use the word align. Yeah. Bring in alignment with why, knowing why you want and being in agreement with it. That's alignment. So you just spoke that and gave me a new resource for my book. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
The last one here I put under achievements, and achievements and interest, things that you, and I'm really interested with you on your interests, the things that you talked about. Flying is such a great joy of yours. Mm-hmm. And I really like looking at the interests of people that are somewhat out of the non-productive realm, because you would say, gosh, I get, joy from all these things, but what do you do just for you? Like that, I fly. It just does something that makes you a more lightful Brad. You may dance or play golf or whatever. What are the things that you do that make you the best Brad?
Well, I love history. I'm a student of history. I love reading about history, learning things. I love technology too, computers, and experimenting with some of the new things that are coming out all the time. And boy, I'll tell you, some of the things now are just absolutely hard to believe, with AI and AI video, and being able to create video with just a simple sentence. I mean, so I would say probably those things. I love being with my wife, dancing with her, and being with my kids. Yeah. Eventually, if everything else is taken away from you, you find out, I think, that the people that you love, your family, that's really essentially, you can boil it down to that's all really that matters. All the other things, the house you live in and the cars you drive and so on, a million years from now, they're not going to be there anymore, but you will be, and your family will be. Yeah. So,
well, thank you. I want to give people resources again. Folks, as always, I'm grateful you've joined us on this journey as we seek to elevate our experience and improve the way we show up for others. This again is Dr. Bradley Nelson, the book that, as you heard part 1, hopefully now hear this, and you want to be able to walk these things out in your life that he's been talking to us about. You can go find it on Amazon or wherever. The Body Code, unlocking your body's ability to heal itself. That's been our muse for this discussion and this series that we're doing on healing. Also, to find practitioners of this and to find more of his resources, you can do that. Go to discoverhealing.com. and you'll find it there. And if you appreciate this podcast, let us know. Give us a rating and review on Spotify or Apple, and reference this. Tell me that that Brad was the best show we've ever done. It'll give us both some confirmation that we're doing the right thing. You can find this episode on YouTube, kevinmiller.co, and find reels on all the social media of the show as well. Just do Kevin Miller CO. And if you want to learn how to master your own inner drive, get my book, What Drives You, and use the body code to figure out if what you think drives you is what really drives you. And until next time, folks, stay driven.